Not even her dog. It's my dog! She's taking my dog!
After completing advanced infantry training at Camp Elliott, Eugene Sledge and the rest of his Marine cohort were assigned to the 46th Replacement Battalion. This temporary holding unit was tasked with transferring new Marines to the Pacific Theater, where they would then be allocated to combat units already in action. On February 28, 1944, the battalion lined up along the docks of San Diego Harbor to board their transport. Although Sledge had seen his fair share of ships growing up near Mobile, Alabama, the President Polk stood out. It appeared to him to be the largest passenger vessel he had ever laid eyes on. The Sledge family had long held a deep admiration for the waters of Alabama and the Gulf Coast. As a child, Eugene's mother, Mary Frank, would take him to the Mobile waterfront, where they would watch the lively port operations and marvel at the vessels that moved in and out of the bay. His eldest son, John Sledge, would later write extensively about the American Gulf in his book, The Gulf of Mexico, capturing the dynamic mix of maritime traffic. In it, he described how traditional fishing boats, charter vessels, and shrimp trawlers were dwarfed by massive steamships and cargo vessels that routinely filled harbors like Mobile's. By the 1930s, the age of sail was nearly over, but the memory of towering schooners and creaking barks lingered. In the early 1970s, during family visits to their grandmother's home, both Sledge brothers would return to the waterfront regularly. Eugene often drove his family there in their grandmother's green and white 1959 Pontiac to soak in the familiar sights and smells of the harbor. John would later recall in his book, The Mobile River, how their grandmother frequently brought him to the docks in the 1960s to watch longshoremen at work. While other children dreamed of becoming sports stars or firemen, Eugene once imagined growing up to be a stevedore, unloading mysterious cargo from salt-crusted freighters. That February morning in 1944, the impression made by the President Polk was vivid and lasting. The gangplank leading to the ship's deck rose at a steep incline, nearly 45 degrees, and seemed to stretch forever. Like thousands of other servicemen, Sledge had to adjust to the cramped and poorly ventilated interior of a troop transport. The only conditions worse than those on these vessels, many would later say, were those endured by submarine crews. Eugene had visited the USS Alabama and the submarine USS Drum at Battleship Memorial Park in Mobile with his brother and father. On a humid day, they climbed through the narrow passageways of the Drum, and Mr. Sledge paused in the crew berthing area. With a whistle and a shake of his head, he expressed admiration for the men who had endured combat inside such confining steel tubes. On board the Polk, though conditions were better than in a sub, the atmosphere was stifling and the lighting was poor. Men took every opportunity to climb topside for fresh air. Below decks, bunks shook as others climbed, and anyone trying to rest often ended up with a boot in the face or a hand on the ribs. Announcements came over the intercom. Now hear this, now hear this, directing them to galley lines and chow stations. Their first meals aboard ship were memorable. With fans whirring overhead, Marines stood at collapsible tables eating shoulder to shoulder. One sailor mentioned that the same tables had been used for surgeries during a previous campaign in the Pacific. The USS President Polk had previously operated as a casualty-receiving ship during the assault on Tarawa in November 1943. By February 1944, she had again carried wounded Marines, this time from Kwajalein and the Marshall Islands, back to the United States. After that mission, the 46th Replacement Battalion boarded her, including Eugene Sledge, bound for the war in the Pacific. In the early hours of the following morning, the vibration of the ship's engines signaled their departure. Around 5 a.m., before the sun rose, the deck filled with Marines hoping to glimpse the shoreline one last time. The mood was quiet and contemplative. Each man stood with his own thoughts, knowing full well he might never return. Sailors moved quickly about the deck to prepare for the voyage, calling out "Gangway! Ship's crew!" as they organized equipment and ensured the ship was secure. Soon the President Polk edged away from the pier and made its slow exit through the bay. As the California coast faded behind them, reduced to a jagged shadow on the horizon, the ship entered open swells and the rolling began. Sledge, like the others, had to learn quickly how to move across a shifting deck without constantly grabbing railings. There were jokes at first. Some said it was the best amusement ride they'd ever had. But as the ship pitched harder, laughter gave way to groans. Many men fell sick, seasick even in mild motion. Sledge was fortunate he never suffered from it, though seasickness would remain a frequent concern in his later life. His doctor diagnosed him with a spastic stomach, and he always kept Rolaids close by. On his nightstand at home, Sledge kept a few personal items: pocket change, keys, a pocket knife, a looped belt with a Japanese dog tag picked up by a friend at Cape Gloucester, and a couple of Rolaids. During a 1974 family vacation to Destin, Florida, he took his sons aboard a fishing charter, the Calypso II, for a 4-hour excursion. The day was sunny, but the Gulf was restless. Waves swelled 5 to 8 feet as the boat cut 5 miles offshore. Sledge, who had once weathered a typhoon aboard a supply ship in the Pacific, took it in stride. The movement reminded him of wartime voyages, and while others grew queasy, he seemed to enjoy the rhythm of the sea. When one of his sons worried about getting sick, Sledge offered a quiet bit of reassurance and one of his ever-present Rolaids. The day-to-day life aboard a transport ship was marked by tedium and repetition. Meals were bland, distractions scarce, and the looming threat of submarines ever-present. A fully packed troopship was a prime target, and so strict orders were issued. No garbage, no cigarette butts, no candy wrappers were to be tossed overboard. The risk of detection was too high, and the penalties for disobedience were severe. The men complied. Daily life included physical drills, rifle inspections, and lifeboat exercises. Orders came over the intercom, and each Marine had a designated place on deck from which he would jump if the abandoned ship order was given. Ship personnel wore bulky life jackets. Passengers kept inflatable rubber belts on at all times. A few days into the voyage, someone on the bow shouted that porpoises were swimming alongside. It was usually a sign that land was near. Watching the marine life, Sledge likely thought of home, Mobile Bay, the Gulf waters he knew so well. He often reflected on the Gulf's unpredictable moods, calm one day, violent the next. During his time in the Pacific, he had seen both. Sometimes the water was so still it looked like polished glass. The immensity of the ocean made an impression on him. The sea seemed endless, just waves and sky for miles. Occasionally they saw flying fish or once the spray of a whale, but otherwise it was an unchanging seascape from horizon to horizon. On March 17th, the President Polk passed through the Great Barrier Reef and neared New Caledonia. A pilot boat met them as they approached harbor, and a local pilot climbed aboard to guide the vessel into Noumea. Surrounded by Navy men in denim and khaki, the pilot looked like a relic from an earlier time. As they moved through the channel, the deep blue Pacific waters turned to green. Any romantic notions of arriving in a tropical port were quickly dispelled. The harbor buzzed with machinery and movement. American servicemen operated tractors, moving crates and equipment with practiced speed. Most of the vessels were U.S. Navy, but there were also foreign freighters and civilian fishing boats dotting the docks. The work of war, not paradise, was waiting. Thanks for watching. If you have a thought on Eugene Sledge's pre-war life, drop a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like.